good evening, wherever you are. It's always a good time to study the gospel, enlightened by Spiritism. Today, we're going to review chapter 53 of the book Our Daily Bread by Emmanuel, and it's based on Paul to the letter to the Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 20 by Paul. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Kardec Radio for opening up their platform for us and allowing us to have different conversations such as this one. Kardec Radio, again, is available in several platforms, including the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. And the interesting thing about the X platform is that in it, you can submit your comments and questions, and the Kardec Radio staff will be able to respond to your inquiries. Before we begin, let's close our eyes in prayer and connect to our spiritual benefactors, our spiritual friends, connect to Jesus and God, and thank for all the opportunities that we have to liberate ourselves from earthly chains, liberate ourselves from different circumstances, from our prejudice, and from our short-sightedness. May we open our eyes and minds so we might have a better and spiritual view of whatever happens to us in our lives. So be it. So again, today we're going to be reviewing chapter 53 of the book Our Daily Bread, and it's titled In Chains. And again, it's based on Paul, the letter to the Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 20. And this particular passage goes like this. For which I am ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. So, under those circumstances, what happened to Paul is that he had been arrested by the Roman authorities and had been put in jail. He was in chains, so he was a prisoner. So he's asking his Ephesian brethren to pray for him so he may continue to be fearlessly be still this ambassador of the gospel, even though he is by physical means he is restrained, I should say. So basically he is restrained from a material standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint he is strong and he's feeling free. Emmanuel explains this passage to us as follows. In this chapter, we observe the apostle of the Gentiles in an affirmation that, at first glance, appears to be contradictory. So why is it contradictory? Because he is an ambassador in chains. So he is restrained, Paul is restrained, but he is an ambassador. Even though he's limited from a material standpoint, from a physical standpoint, he still feels free to preach the gospel. Emmanuel continues indicating that Paul alleges his condition to be of an emissary in chains and simultaneously declares that this occurs so that he can serve the gospel as freely as needed. So it's kind of an interesting, again, seems to be an oxymoron, right? You are in chains, but at the same time, you're more free than ever to preach, more free than ever to be a spokesperson for the good news. And Emmanuel continues indicating that the great worker was addressing the companions at Ephesus, referring to his distressing situation as a prisoner of the Roman authorities. Meanwhile, because of this and the difficult testimony, his spirit was more at liberty for the service that he had to perform. So Emmanuel further clarifies here that, yes, Paul was a prisoner. Paul was restrained by material means. However, those circumstances, instead of being an impediment, they actually set himself more free for the service of God, for the service that he had to perform. And a lot of times we see that. A lot of times we are in situations in which we consider ourselves restrained, we consider ourselves incapable of doing good. But maybe those circumstances appear to us maybe not for sure, they appear to us so that our spirit may be in a better situation. We might be better connected to God and to serve God on earth. Being in a difficult situation and being in any kind of constraint, as inconvenient as it might be, actually it opens our minds to new possibilities. Being constrained by physical means being limited, it forces our brain, our mind to think of solutions. And it also helps us to remain true to the beliefs of humility, or beliefs of gospel that preach us the necessity of being humble and the necessity of being charitable. So if we find ourselves in any kind of constraints, let's not forget the example that Paul brings to us. And Emmanuel continues his explanation here, indicating that there are people who feel that they should wait for material abundance and earthly facilities in order to attend to the Christian ideals. But this does not make sense. The service displayed by Jesus is designated for all places. So again, we should not wait for the ideal moment from a material standpoint, from an earthly standpoint, to do what's good, to do what's right. Because regardless of our situation, we can display service in anywhere. We might be, God forbid, we might be in a prison, we might be in our workplaces, in society, in our daily dealings with our brothers and sisters here on earth. We might be with our family. Regardless, we always have a chance to do what's right and always have a chance to be emissaries of Jesus, just like Paul mentioned here. And by being emissaries, meaning may our actions not necessarily, we might not necessarily be preaching, but our actions, they speak louder than words. So regardless of where we are in whatever condition, whatever social status we find ourselves in, whatever country, whatever economic status, we always have an opportunity, we always have opportunities to serve God. And Emmanuel continues here, indicating that Paul, while in chains, seems to feel more at liberty to preach the truth. Naturally, not all disciples will be crossing those perks of testimony, but all, without distinction, bring along with them the saintly chains of the daily obligations in the home, at work, in the hourly routine, in society, and in the family. So, again, each human being on earth is in a different situation. And again, speaking of finances, I might find myself, due to my financial circumstances, that my material means are limited, but that's not, again, an excuse not to be charitable, not an excuse to be humble, not an excuse to help my brothers and sisters and try to follow the word of the gospel. But I can also find myself surrounded by riches. And that's also a restraint as well. Why is it a restraint? Because again, if I am in a better situation financially, that means that I'm also going to spend time taking care of finances. If I'm a business person, I'm going to spend time taking care of my daily activities. Again, and those serve as constraints, but those physical constraints are no excuse for us not to follow the teachings of Jesus, and again, to be these emissaries and be emissaries by our example, by our words, maybe, but especially by the way we act. And again, and Emmanuel mentions here anywhere, at home, at work, in our routine, in society as a whole, and especially with our loved ones in our family. Emmanuel finalizes indicating that no one, therefore, should be intent on breaking the chains in which he finds himself, in the erroneous supposition that he will be a candidate for a better position in the workplace of Christ. And again, So, of course, if we are in a predicament, yeah, we should work to get out of the predicament. If we're in a bad situation, yeah, of course, by all means, we have to get out of this situation. We have to work hard to get out of the situation to solve whatever problem we're dealing with. But that's not an excuse not to be a good Christian. It's not an excuse, again, to be charitable, to be humble, and to be a servant of God. Again, we can be a servant of God. We should be servants of God in whichever circumstance we find ourselves in. And there's a last statement here that Emmanuel brings to us. Only our duties, I'm sorry, only our duties correctly fulfilled will confer us access to legitimate freedom. So our duties, and here it goes beyond our earthly duties, goes beyond the duties on earth, our obligations. He's talking about our spiritual duties. So if we are going through whatever difficult situation we might be going through on earth, it is either because we are expiating for past actions from either this life or from a previous life, or I'm going through a trial. It's a test for me to go through it. And the true freedom from that might not be necessarily for me to be, let's say, in a better financial situation, a better position in the societal hierarchy. Even though there's nothing wrong with that, there's nothing wrong with us trying to solve our problems. But the true freedom is actually when we fulfill our obligations as Christians, as we fulfill our obligations with God's laws. So that's when we're truly free. We're truly free because we are going to be servers, legitimate servants of God in this case. And Emmanuel nails it here when he indicates that that's going to be the legitimate freedom. That's our conversation for today. I hope you like it. And if you've enjoyed this particular discussion or similar discussions offered to you by Kardec Radio, make sure you click the like button and the subscribe button or the follow button in Kardec Radio. Regardless, Kardec Radio is here to bring different programs to you, such as this one. An interesting aspect also of Kardec Radio, speaking of Kardec Radio offers also their own application that you can download in your favorite app store. And in the Kardec Radio application, you will have access to podcast like programs. And it's, again, make sure you download it and check it out. At this time, let's take this opportunity again to close our eyes and connect with God, with Jesus, with our spiritual friends, and ask for enlightenment. First of all, ask for strength so we might fulfill our duties here on earth, regardless of the situation that we are, regardless of our riches or lack thereof, regardless of the harmony of our lives, or the lack of harmony as well. The disharmony doesn't matter. It doesn't matter my financial situation, my position in society, where I live, the size of my family, the type of family, my race, my ethnicity, whatever my native language is. Nothing that really matters. There are no constraints for us because even though on earth, by earthly standards, there are all different limitations, our spirits are free. And we have our free will to act always, regardless of the circumstances. So we're always free to choose our path, to do what's right, and especially to extend a hand to our brothers and sisters on earth, both incarnate and disincarnate. May God's peace be with us always and we always look for opportunities to serve. So be it.